So the last part of the concept, that is world history. So when we talk about world, it's just like the modern India, we have the modern world. Our syllabus is going to start here from the important phenomena of enlightenment. So if you are able to understand what is enlightenment, many of the revolutions, concepts can be understood in a better manner. So how many of you know the meaning of enlightenment? It can have various meanings. Like for Buddha, it was something else. It was going above the desires. Okay, but for the Europeans, enlightenment means something else. Everybody has their own definition of enlightenment. But as a concept, when we see it, the whole idea of enlightenment was with respect to the progress of the mankind in terms of thinking. Okay, if we see the medieval setup was same everywhere. Okay, this medieval setup had despotic polity. All the powers of the government, executive, legislature, judiciary, all of them, they were combined in the king. King was the karta dharta of everything. And everything will be under his control. And there was no system of elections. They were having the dynasties. So this is what the medieval era was like. Thereafter, when we talk about despotism, society was also suffering from the system of privileges. People were differentiated on the basis of their birth. And that's why the society was having the basic division. Let's just take the example of France. The French society was divided into three parts. The first included the clergy or the religious people. Okay. The second part, it belongs to the nobility. And third included the rest of the population. Hardly 1% of population. This was 98. All types of privileges, they were enjoyed by the clergy and the nobility. What are privileges? Like if I tell you कि आपको कोई tax नहीं pay करना, ठीक है? So it's a very big privilege. If you are able to levy a tax on others, कि अपने neighbor के ऊपर tax लगाना शुरू कर दे कि नहीं यहाँ रहना है तो you have to pay some money to me. That is a privilege. On some specific occasions, you are always the chief guest. That's also a privilege. So society was having large number of privileges, but these privileges were limited to very lower percentage of the population, and this also reflected a kind of medieval setup. Third important thing which we have already discussed in modern also, economy. First of all, this economy was driven by hand tools. Industrial revolution had not started. Plus, economic freedom was not given to all people. Okay, like you can choose any of your profession. No, there was a system of guilds. Guilds means associations of the craftsmen. They were trying to regulate who can enter which profession or not. So large number of limitations were there even in the economy. Religious life was very impactful. Meaning, religion was having a complete control over society. It was the one which was ensuring the continuance of superstitions. Okay, you must have heard this story. Copernicus told everyone that Earth is revolving around the sun, and he was burnt alive. From where did that order came? It came from religion, because whatever was the interpretation of the Pope was to be accepted by people without any questioning. So So no freedom of speech and expression. So in few words, what we can understand that people, there are always two sides. Yes, we are able to understand the problems in these different lives of people, but people are also having a level of acceptance. This is the bigger problem. Like all of us know how the politics of India works. आप कितना भी बोलो कि हम ईमानदार हैं, everybody know कितने लोग ईमानदार हैं. All of you understand this? So the problem is not only here, it is also here. If everyone becomes a kind of rational person in India today itself, तो चीजें बड़ी आसान हो जाएंगी. If everybody start thinking about the civil society, things will become very easy for everyone. But is it going to happen? नॉर्थ इंडिया में एक बार किसी ने आगे गाड़ी लगा दी, हॉर्न लगा के निकल के पीछे इधर आओ, है ना? This is a crime for which in my code there is only death, right? So problem तो होगा ही, हर सोसाइटी में प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, और उससे बड़ा इशू क्या होता है? एक्सेप्टेंस. लाइक ऑल ऑफ अस टॉक अबाउट वुमेन राइट्स, है ना, कि वुमेन राइट्स होना चाहिए होना चाहिए होना चाहिए, बट ऑल ऑफ अस ऑल्सो नो दैट the maximum carriers of the patriarchy, it is not men, it is women. From the birth of a girl child itself, her mother is going to tell her what to do, what not to do. And from where does it come? They are unconsciously going towards patriarchy. How in a patriarchy system a girl or then a woman is about to behave. So all those foundational years, this is how it starts. Same thing were there. Medieval problems were there, but people were accepting them. What will happen if people start questioning these problems? What qualities are required to question the problems? कैसे question करते हैं? First of all, you have to become more rational in your life. You have to identify what is the basis of some system. If king says, no, I am the king, you have to ask the question, who made you the king? Right? This set of questions should start, but asking such question can also lead to loss of your life. Right? अगर आप एक king से पूछ रहे हो of 18th century, king किसने बनाया आपको? इधर आओ, है ना? Next day would be only questions will remain. आप चले जाओगे. That will be the problem. So that's why along with this thinking, you have to also have a level of maturity, the right methods through which you can solve these problems. You should have popular faith of all the people. अगर वो सब लोग साथ नहीं आएंगे, then the problems cannot be solved. This was the problem which was being faced by the society of Europe. And when people started asking questions to change this thing, this is something which we say the beginning of enlightenment. And enlightenment was nothing. It is about the maturity of mankind. And what happens when we have maturity? We are able to rise above ignorance. Even though many of you would say ignorance is bliss, it is not bliss when you are at the receiving end. It is bliss when you are at the higher level. Alright, so you are able to rise above ignorance. You are able to rise above all the other factors also, including your own level of thinking. You have to develop some thinking, then only you can become mature. है ना, हम बोलते हैं ना बच्चे की तरह behave मत करो. There is a difference between a kid and an adult, and that is maturity. But the maturity that we take for granted right now, at that point of time, this maturity was not there with people. That's why the beginning of the world history, the first topic is enlightenment. And this enlightenment came up with various ideas. It came up with the ideas like in political realms, it came with the idea of separation of powers. Okay, it came up with rule of law. It came with political liberalism. All these ideas were coming. I'm not saying that the changes which were required were done immediately. but at least the questioning started. People were now not going to stay within their houses. They were asking these difficult questions. And once these difficult questions started, this was bound to create a movement which was known as Enlightenment. So Enlightenment is nothing but it's a cultural movement which affected the polity, economy, society and culture of Europe in 17th and 18th century. Enlightenment is also known as the age of reason, where people started putting more emphasis on reason rather than accepting everything which has been told by the king, pope or the nobility. They started questioning those things. This is what Enlightenment is all about, which eventually creates maturity. So this is the first topic of your syllabus, and UPSC always asks a question from here. They have mentioned two specific philosophers also here. The first one is Rousseau and the second is Immanuel Kant. But it does not mean we have only two philosophers. We have large number of philosophers who has contributed for the understanding of Enlightenment. Immanuel Kant is important because it was Immanuel Kant who asked this question to the people of Europe. In 1784, he published a pamphlet, What is Enlightenment? He asked people, कि भाई बताओ, what is Enlightenment? And then he himself gave this answer, okay, that it is about the maturity of mankind. It is about rationality. It is about self-confidence. Can you reason without self-confidence? No. If you have no faith in yourself, you cannot have this also. Because eventually whatever will be told by other people, आप उसको accept करके बैठ जाओगे. This is what is required. And how does it come? It comes through education, not only of the books, of your mind. Alright, that's why largely 18th century came to known as the age of reason. Before this, we accepted all these problems in different parts of life. And once we started questioning, once the new framework of ideas came, like all of you know about free market economy, Adam Smith, the father of economics, these ideas came. He was from Scotland, wrote a famous book, Wealth of Nations. और उसके basis पे new ideas आए, and that also became part of the age of Enlightenment. Religion, we have Voltaire as a famous person who did a lot of research on religion and came up with the found out that the church is nothing but an institution which is promoting bigotry. Bigotry means lack of tolerance or understanding of the ideas of others. So all these philosophers started questioning each and everything minutely, and this was going to create change, not immediately, at least in the long run. Okay, so this is what Enlightenment is all about. Whenever we try to understand Enlightenment, we try to understand its various facets, how Enlightenment was going to affect people. So we are able to understand one shape of the Enlightenment was the creation of ideas in all these fields: political life, economic, social, culture, religious, scientific, all of this, these ideas were created. Second, it was able to generate influence on various kings. Like there was one famous king, Frederick the Great of Prussia. He started doing reforms in his kingdom by understanding these ideas of Enlightenment. And he came to the people and told them, I am the first servant of the state. When Modi ji came to power, he says, मैं प्रधानमंत्री नहीं हूँ, मैं प्रधान सेवक हूँ. This is not something new. Frederick the Great said it in 17th, 18th century. और फिर भी नहीं बने सेवक. है ना? Why? Because these people were saying something and doing something else. Today there is more accountability. Right? There is accountability for the actions of people who are in power. At that point of time, there was no accountability. Anything could be justified. Those were the times where wars and battles were fought on every decade. ऐसा नहीं था कि मतलब wars होते चलता रहता था. Continuously it used to be there. They used to be smaller than the scale which we realized in the early 20th century, World War I and World War II. But wars and battles, they were the fancies of these kings. Whenever there used to be domestic problem, they used to go and fight wars to get the, you can say, support of their own people. But some of them, they started reforming them to some level. Like we have the Catherine the Great of Russia, Joseph II of Austria. So these people who started getting influenced by the ideas of enlightenment, they came to known as enlightened despots. We are still using the word despots because they did not reform as per all the ideas of enlightenment. They did not allow the reforms in political field. They allowed some in social field, some in economy. उसमें allow करना शुरू कर दिया. Education के लिए reform start कर दिए, but they did not dilute their own powers. And this is very important. Okay, so enlightenment helped in the generation of ideas. It influenced some of the rulers who started doing some reforms which were good for the people in the long run. Okay, but these enlightened despots were limited to few countries. Like I have given you example of Prussia, Russia, Austria. Cromwell was there in the Portugal. So they are limited 3-4 countries. Rest of the countries like France was not having any specific reforms. So reform started. So enlightenment was something which was going to generate at third level certain revolutions. ठीक है, समझ में आ रहा है? सबसे पहले क्या जनरेट हुआ? Ideas. Once ideas were generated, some monarchs, they were ready enough to absorb them, not in the political field, at least in society and economy. And those who didn't do it, eventually it led to the rise of revolutions in the long run. We'll discuss all those revolutions, but first you have to understand कि revolution होता क्यों है? What's the reason behind it? Why people wanted, why they are ready for giving up their life for that cause. Like when French public became so incensed with their king, they said, no, we want republic. We want equality for everyone. We don't want privilege in this society anymore. How did that came? It came from these ideas. It came when they were not able to influence their king, or the king was not ready for any kind of reform. So that's why the third level is always revolutions. Fourth is all about the other impact of enlightenment, which may not be direct, okay, it may be indirect, like the, you can say, force given to development of literature. All these famous, you can say, philosophers came up with their different literature. So we see the rise of literature. It created a scientific type of mindset which was required for industrial revolution later on. So these are the all side things of enlightenment. Plus one thing which you have to remember, enlightenment initially spread to Europe, not to the rest of the continents. Okay, when these Europeans came to different parts of the world, then the ideas of enlightenment also reached there. So in 18th century, we roughly say it was Europe plus it was United States of America. So that's why the first major revolution in world history, it happens in USA, because these people were enlightened. Okay, they were having access to this literature which was providing them the new ideas. Okay, similarly England also had certain important philosophers like John Locke, okay, the father of liberalism. That's why there also we see the development of science, where the king themselves were promoting these various activities. Alright, the rest of the continents like Asia largely got the ideas of enlightenment in 19th century. All of you understand, then when British came up with their education policy, the syllabus which was chosen by them, it was nothing but the ideas of enlightenment. Education starts from there. So when they promoted, it came to India in 19th century. For countries of Africa was colonized very late, okay, by the end of the 19th century. So majority of the countries in Africa were able to get these ideas in the 20th century. Latin America also in 19th century. Okay, so this is how enlightenment started spreading to different parts of the world, and these ideas were bound to have importance throughout the world. You see your preamble. This is what I tell to all of you. अपने preamble को पढ़ो. We the people of India, गेव टू आवरसेल्फ, उसके बाद फिर हमने फीचर्स नोट डाउन किए हैं, है ना, कि हाउ द स्टेट वुड बी। अब स्टेट के आगे क्या क्या वर्ड यूज किया उन्होंने, दे से इट इज सॉवरन, डेमोक्रेटिक, रिपब्लिक, सेकुलर बाद में वर्ड हमने यूज कर दिया, और सोशलिस्ट भी वर्ड यूज करते। सो फ्रॉम वेयर डिड दीज वर्ड्स हैव कम? These words have come from one or the other revolution, okay, or some of these ideas. कहाँ से आपके वर्ड आते हैं कि भाई इक्वालिटी चाहिए, किस चीज में इक्वालिटी चाहिए, ठीक है? Why did they say fraternity of people? Because so many wars have been fought by the previous generation. That's why we have used this word fraternity, brotherhood of mankind. It should be there. The whole your preamble, see your constitution. Your constitution is created on the modern ideas, and these ideas also ideas of enlightenment. Just try to understand क्या क्या basic features of our Indian constitution. That is nothing but it's a reflection of these ideas only. और कुछ नहीं है वो, यही reflection है. So when we read, yes. Exactly. देखो एनलाइटनमेंट में जो जो लोग थे, ठीक है, जो जो मेजर फिलोसफर्स थे, दे वर डूइंग देयर रिसर्च, ठीक है. सो थ्रू दैट रिसर्च एजुकेशन वाज मोस्टली लिमिटेड टू द नोबल पीपल, है ना, कॉमन पीपल के लिए तो कुछ था नहीं. दे वर मोस्टली वर्किंग इन द फील्ड्स. सो विदाउट दैट अंडरस्टैंडिंग, विदाउट दैट एजुकेशन, विदाउट दैट प्रिविलेजेस, यू विल नॉट हैव दोज आइडियाज. आपने सिविल सर्विसेज के बारे में कब सोचा? व्हेन योर फैमिली वाज रेडी टू प्रोवाइड फॉर यू, when you got it into the school कि हाँ अच्छे से एजुकेशन हो गई, है ना. बट आवर प्रीवियस जनरेशन वर दे वर एबल टू थिंक अबाउट इट? इन 99% ऑफ द एस्पिरेंट्स इट वुड बी लाइक कि नहीं होगा. बहुत ही कम होता है ना कि भाई ऑलरेडी ऑफिसर्स हैं, उन्हीं के ही बच्चे बन रहे हैं. नहीं तो मैक्सिमम केस में क्या होता है, कौन लोग आते हैं सिविल सर्विस की तैयारी करने के लिए? जिनके पेरेंट्स ने सपना देखा है, बट दे डू नॉट नो हाउ टू डू इट. सो फर्स्ट देयर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी was to ensure वही रोटी कपड़ा और मकान. once that was done you are the one. ना अब आप मल्टीप्लाई कर सकते हो इस चीज को. सेम चीज वहां भी है. if there is no specific education, I'm not saying education is only going to come in a formal setup, it can also be through self education, but आपको उसके ऊपर टाइम देना पड़ेगा. okay, yes.
जो हमारे रूलर्स थे तो ज्यादा ताकतवर थे, तो उन्होंने रेवोल्यूशन होने ही नहीं.
देखो हर एज की एक वो होती ना डेस्टिनी होती है. व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट एंशिएंट इंडिया, एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इवन दोस थिंग्स वर एडवांस्ड. लाइक वैदिक पीरियड तक तो हमारा स्टेट सिस्टम बन ही नहीं पाया था. हु वाज रेगुलेटिंग देम, है ना? We do not know clearly about Indus Valley civilization. We always say कि हाँ there must have been some state. We have no idea. Even in Vedic period we did not have any specific institution जिसको हम कहें कि हाँ पूरा state system बन गया है. Okay, so education था, but education was something, it was a privilege in those times. Okay, कितने परसेंटेज लोग की लिटरेसी रहा होगा? Even at a time of independence हमारे पास 20-25% लोग भी नहीं थे. Okay, and when you go century back, तो उनको हर किसी का फोकस था ऑन देयर इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी, और उसके थ्रू जो सीख लिया वो सीख लिया, अदरवाइज इट वाज नॉट देयर. है ना? व्हेन यू सी सीरियल्स की किंग के लिए अलग से एक ट्यूटर आ रहा है. आज की डेट में अगर आप देखोगे द लाइफ दैट यू आर लिविंग, इट इज बेटर देन ऑल द किंग्स ऑफ 19th century, 16th century. अब उससे ज्यादा राजा वाली जिंदगी जी रहे हैं आप सब लोग. बट द ओनली, हाँ मतलब आप देखो ना, इफ यू वांट टू गो फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर, कितना टाइम लगता है आपको? यूएसए भी जाना तो एक फ्लाइट पकड़ लोगे, यूरोप भी जाना तो भी जा सकते हो, दिल्ली से आपको अपने होम स्टेशन जाना कितना टाइम लगता है? तो आप राजा से अच्छी जिंदगी जी रहे हो आज. बट द ओनली थिंग इज आज के राजा बदल चुके हैं. आज के राजा बिलियनियर है, दे आर नॉट डायरेक्ट लाइक दिस. तो अब आज आप चाहते हो कि यार पैसिव इनकम होनी चाहिए, मैं बस खाता पीता रहूं, मौज मस्ती करता रहूं, पैसा आता रहना चाहिए, राइट? हर किसी की एज में चीजें चेंज होती रहती हैं. So when we see the education of those times, so it was not accessible for maximum of the masses. Try to understand that when the Varna system was developed, अब लास्ट वर्ना को तो उन्होंने अलाउ ही नहीं किया, है ना? और मैक्सिमम में टीचर्स में मोनोपोली थी, है ना? इफ यू आस्क मी कि भाई आपकी कास्ट क्या है, आई एम नॉट फ्रॉम अ ब्राह्मण बैकग्राउंड, एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम ब्राह्मण बैकग्राउंड के बिना आपको कोई अलाउ करता, एंड दैट टू इन एन ओरल ट्रेडिशन। आज पता क्या होता है, हमें प्रिविलेज है, बुक खरीदी अमेजोन पे, ऐसा लगता है बुक तो मिल ही जाती है। एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इट वाज नॉट लाइक दिस माय फ्रेंड, बुक्स नहीं थी, बुक्स बहुत लेट थे, वो पाल्म लीफ लेके घूम रहे थे लोग इधर से उधर, उसके ऊपर ही लिख के। पेपर जब स्टार्ट यूज हुआ है ना, चाइना में सबसे पहले यूज हुआ, फिर इंडिया में भी इसका यूज हुआ, तो बहुत टाइम लगा हर एक छोटी छोटी फंडामेंटल चेंज के लिए। तो जब हम सोचते हैं कि एजुकेशन तब क्यों नहीं थी, अमेजोन तो होगा यार बिकॉज हम पहले ही दिमाग में सोच लेते कि ये सब चीज तो थी, कैमरा भी था इनके पास, लोगों ने बस ध्यान नहीं दिया, पढ़ाई नहीं की इन लोगों ने ढंग से। हर चीज रेवोल्यूशनरी रही है। प्रिंटिंग प्रेस का अच्छे से जो यूज हुआ ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ विच यू आर एबल टू गेट बुक्स ऑन मास स्केल, ये 14-15 सेंचुरी से शुरू हुआ, उससे पहले था ही नहीं हमारे पास प्रिंटिंग प्रेस। तो अगर आपको एक बुक भी पढ़नी है और कहीं लेके जानी है, यू हैव टू डू इट बाय हैंड। तो सोचो, नोट्स बनाने में 4-5 महीने निकल जाते हैं आपके फाउंडेशन कोर्स में, आप एक बुक की कॉपी करने के लिए रेडी रहोगे और उसके लिए कोई पैसा भी नहीं देगा, वो बोलेगा एजुकेशन दे रहे इतना ही बहुत है आपके लिए। थिंग्स वर वेरी डिफरेंट। तो हिस्ट्री में जब भी आप सोचते हो तो आप उस टाइम की कंडीशंस को इमेजिन करो, देन ओनली यू अंडरस्टैंड कि हाँ यार प्रॉब्लम तो थी, पीपल वर नॉट हैविंग दैट मच मनी, कास्ट सिस्टम वाज मेकिंग सर्टेन पार्ट ऑफ सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी। आप सोचो ना, look, let us try to create statistics. At any point of time, population has men as well as women. All historical societies, 50% of the population was not allowed any kind of privileges, है ना? We have hardly 1 or 2 queen और उन्हीं को सेलिब्रेट करके हम खुश हो जाते हैं। So it means 50% को तो आपने वैसे ही अलग कर दिया, right? Here also the Varna system. So the upper 2 Varna were having the maximum privileges. तो घूम फिर के कितना रेशियो निकलेगा? Who are having access to education, and there also कितने लोग टीचर बनना चाह रहे होंगे उस टाइम पे, ठीक है? तो इसलिए जब हम एनलाइटनमेंट पढ़ते हैं ना, वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स वर नाउ इन प्लेस। प्रिंटिंग प्रेस वाज ऑलरेडी देयर, पीपल वर हैविंग इनफ इनकम, है ना? मेजॉरिटी ऑफ दीज फिलोसफर वर देमसेल्फ नोबल्स। आप जानते हो ना, ज्यादातर जितने भी एस्टैब्लिश लोग होते हैं आजकल उनके अपने अपने शो आने लग गए, चाय पे चर्चा टाइप। तो ये भी वैसे ही लोग थे, ये हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे कि ऑल दीज नोबल्स जो बकैती काट रहे हैं बैठ के अलग अलग आइडियाज की, इक्वालिटी होनी चाहिए, वो खुद फिर सिर्फ रहता था, अच्छा एक काम करना अब ये ले आओ वी वांट इक्वालिटी। सो दीज पीपल वर कमिंग अप विद आइडियाज बट दे वर नॉट देमसेल्फ इम्प्लीमेंटिंग देम। तो आइडियाज जनरेट हुए थे, सिर्फ आइडियाज, और वो 100% आज तक भी नहीं है। आपको ही पता है आज से ज्यादा मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड तो नहीं रहा होगा, है ना? इट वाज अ वर्ल्ड बट नॉट मॉडर्न देन टुडे। आज ज्यादा मॉडर्निटी है देन द दोस जनरेशन ऑफ 18th सेंचुरी, बट these ideas were catching the imagination of the people. That is something which was important. People were ready for understanding these ideas. Before this तो वो भी ready नहीं थे। So a framework बनाना पड़ता है और उसी के अंदर ही वो चीज फ्लोरिश करने लगेगी। Like when I am telling you, Copernicus came up this discovery, है ना? उसने देखा कि हाँ ठीक है, I am able to understand the planetary motion. Earth is revolving around sun. इधर से आए पोप, ले जाओ इनको क्या दिक्कत है, राइट? मैंने एक बार बता दिया ना कि हमारे अराउंड पूरा ब्रह्मांड घूम रहा है, इसके बाद चेंज नहीं करना है इसको, रोज रोज में आके ये आंसर चेंज नहीं कर सकता। तो दिस इज द लेवल ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ पीपल इन दो जनरेशंस। ये चीजें चेंज कैसे हुई? दिस हैपेंड ओनली व्हेन नाउ पीपल वर रेडी टू एक्सेप्ट दीज आइडियाज। आज की डेट में आपको बचपन से ही सिखाया जाता है कि एक बार आप 4-5 साल के होते हैं, लॉजिकल बात करो, रैशनल बात करो, ये करो वो करो। So you are feeded that thing from the initial. That's why जब आप बात करते हो तो इन चीजों पे बात आती है। एजुकेशन अब तो आई थिंक आई हैव अ स्मॉल किड, है ना, 1.5 साल से उनको प्ले स्कूल में डाल देते हैं, जाओ बेटा खेलो, पढ़ के आना। आप अपना देखो, मतलब हम लोगों में कम से कम 5-6 साल तक तो जिंदगी जिए, आज के बेचारे तो बच्चे स्लेवरी में 1.5 साल से, चलो जाओ। So things are going to change, generations are going to change. Education will always flourish in a different manners. So education of those era can never be linked with education of today. And when we try to understand this enlightenment, you have to understand, ठीक है, यहाँ भी 80 to 90% of the population is still not ready to understand this. But some leaders are emerging who are ready for such ideas. Okay, so the first topic which we have, it's purely about what is enlightenment. So you have to also understand, whenever you become independent, independent means you're able to think on your own, you're able to take action on your own without the guidance of others. This is what true independence means. Nobody is restricting your freedom in these areas. Same kind of flavor was seen by Europe in 18th century. This is enlightenment broadly. Then we try to understand the different philosophers. One of the most important philosophers is Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau was something who said कि भाई आप सबको कोट पढ़ने मजा आता है? Okay, he says man is born free, but he is everywhere in chains. He came up with a famous theory. All of you now use this word more often, social contract. Nobody was questioning who gave the rights to the king. Nobody was saying that. किसने दिया उनको right? है ना? We had discussed previously that it was always the alliance between the religious class and the political class. Both of them, they were trying to help each other. Okay? But who gave them that right? Who was the first king? किस reason पे वो king बना? He tried to explain it through the theory of social contract, and on the basis of which he came to this conclusion. अपने theory की पहली opening lines है, man is born free, but he is everywhere in chains. So what he is saying, when somebody is born, they're relatively free from any kind of influences. है ना? Like imagine, आपको नाम किसने दिया? आपको खुद से तो कोई नाम था नहीं, बाहर से किसी ने 10 बार पुकारा, आप सोचे हाँ ये मैं ही हूँ, this is me. You started recognizing with that name. This name is not given to you by yourself, it came from outside. Your whole identity, the language, वो कहाँ से आई? It comes from your family. The thinking, initial thinking, जो भी आपके आसपास होगा, आपको उसके बेसिस पे डेवलपमेंट होती है. So that's how he was able to see कि man is born free, but he is everywhere in chains. And I'll make you understand through different examples. So he says, when there was evolution of humanity, initially there was very less population, and whenever there is very less population, nobody is going to require a king or a queen. The reason being, we have abundant of resources, there is no fight. अगर आज राजेंद्र नगर में सिर्फ 10 लोग रहने लग जाएं, जिस बिल्डिंग में रखना रख लो, है ना, रेंट जीरो, है ना, रह लो, वही बहुत है. you'll cry कि कोई आके मुझसे बात करे, लैंडलॉर्ड्स भी गले लगेगा, आ गया प्रभु. Okay, so it all depends upon resources. If resources are scarce, competition becomes high, the value of those resources increases, and people are going to fight for that. Okay, so in previous generation it used to be wars. हम आजकल स्पोर्ट्स से ही काम चला लेते हैं, लड़ाई करके एक दूसरे से कि ये टीम जीतनी चाहिए, वो टीम जीतनी चाहिए. Right? This is how we are channelizing the energy of humankind. जो वॉर की तरफ जाती थी वो कहाँ जाती है? स्पोर्ट्स की तरफ. राइट? स्पोर्ट्स की तरफ, या फिर सोशल मीडिया पे एक दूसरे को गाली देके, है ना, कि भाई ठीक है बहुत एनर्जी आपके पास, ऐसे ऐसे चैनलाइज कर लो इसको. दिस इज हाउ यू शुड डू इट. बट he came to a conclusion that these kings were created for some specific reason. Okay, and what were those reasons? If we have a community, this community gave certain privileges to the king, and in return the king was required to provide certain services. This is a kind of social contract. If you are not providing those services, only increasing your privileges, then we can overthrow such a king. He was the first person who said we can overthrow a king. So this is a revolutionary idea. Before this, nobody was thinking along these lines. That why the system or why the state is created. The state is created so that all of you have to understand. Like today, if I say that India as a state should not be there और हमें government की जरूरत नहीं है. Gandhiji was of the idea that we do not require a government. But what do you think? Without government, can we work? We can only work without a government if the resources are unlimited and population is small. Okay. Whenever we think of fear, what do you fear the most? है ना? Is it ghosts? No. सबसे ज्यादा हमें डर घूम फिर के इंसान से ही लगता है ना? जितने भी लायन है, जितने भी एनिमल्स है, वो तो सब हमने जू के आसपास बैठा दिए. आप यहाँ बैठो. So the whole fear, it comes from human. Alright. And to check that, we should have a state. And this state system required some machinery. And without giving these privileges, they cannot work. If we tell the government कि पुलिस की powers हटा रहे हैं हम आपसे, will we be able to function? नहीं function कर पाएंगे. But we have to also understand that this privilege which has been given to the king, this should not be misused. But throughout the history, this has been misused. That's why he said the political, economic, social, cultural, religious problem which were there in the age of 18th century, these are the chains that he talked about. So he was able to contribute, even though I'm not saying this person was of very high character, no, but he was able to generate a appealing idea which was going to change France in the long run. The people of France will eventually say, we want our nation to be free from any kind of king. We will go for republic. Those ideas have come from these philosophers. Similar kind of important personality was Immanuel Kant. Rousseau was from France, Immanuel Kant was from Germany. So Immanuel Kant also came up with various kind of ideas. Like सबने सुना होगा ना कि हाँ हर कोई दिल से तो अच्छा होता है, पता नहीं बाद में करप्ट हो जाता है, राइट? सुना होगा ये, अच्छा लगता है सुनने में, हर किसी को लगता है हाँ हाँ हम ऐसे ही थे. So this idea was also eventually accepted by Immanuel Kant. He says humans are good by nature. It's only the circumstances which eventually leads to corruption and wrongful actions. So that's why he says throughout life we should try to become more moral. We should try to become ethical. That was a fundamental idea of Immanuel Kant. He said material progress is not the real progress is moral progress of the mankind. He was the one who stressed that the ideas of enlightenment should spread among the common people. He became a professor in one of the university, started coming up one or the other kind of researches. Okay, he was the one who put a lot of emphasis on conscience. And all of you understand what conscience is? In simple word, it is nothing but it's a faculty which judges your action. Antaratma जिसको बोलते हैं. Okay, so he said if everybody is allowed to act as per their pure conscience, they will always take good actions. But as all of us know, this is not possible. Some people are made in different way. They are not going to act in the way majority should. But these ideas were very powerful. One was trying to have a big impact on the working of the state. One impacted the thinking and the actions of the humans. That's why these two philosophers stand out. And UPSC asks a lot of questions on them. Okay, this is the basic building block of the world history, where we talk about what is enlightenment, we talk about who are these philosophers and how they were able to make our life easier. Had these philosophers been not there, today also the king queen system would have been there. The manner in which all of you are preparing for civil services, this would have been a privilege, like the way it used to be under the British, that only some chosen few can enter civil services. But this whole concept of democracy, popular sovereignty, we the people of India, from where does it come? It comes from the ideas of these philosophers. So that's why we understand them in world history. And once we do it, this is going to help you even in your essay writing. Because in essay writing, these kinds of statements, if you use, it provides a different dimension to your answer writing. Okay? This is the first topic which we are required to talk about. Okay? समझ में आया? What is enlightenment all about? It is about new thinking. It is about new ideas. It is about creation of an atmosphere where the state can work for the people rather than otherwise. This is how the enlightenment was going to improve the understanding of people. Now, this is just the first topic. With this, like I have told you, these ideas were going to have certain impact. Okay, one was that enlightened despotism itself, with some of the rural reforms themselves. But the other ideas, like we see the rise of capitalism. Whenever we talk about free market economy, what is free market economy? Where government is not trying to hinder the economic growth. And how is that going to happen? When industries, they are given free hand. And this is nothing but, this is the beginning of capitalism. So this was bound to have a big impact initially in England. England became the centerpiece or the major area where capitalism was going to develop, because they reduced the apparatus of state which was regulating the economic activities. And this capitalism was eventually going to push industrial revolution. So when somebody says industrial revolution, the basic meaning is very clear. The previous generation, before the industrial revolution, what were they doing? They were producing various kinds of garments, various kinds of objects with the help of their hands. Nothing was automatic in nature. But once we created machines, now machines are not having the problems that the people face. What are the problems with us? We have this body we have to take care of. We can work for 7 to 8 hours a day, or if you are very hard working, 12 to 14 at the max. After that, eventually you require sleep. The human rights comes into picture. But for machine, do we have any kind of rights? No. They can come for very high scale of production. They can reduce the overall cost. So once we see the development of capitalism, we see the rise of industrial revolution. Both were helping each other. And England became the harbinger or the first place where industrial revolution was going to start. And it also has certain factors which are responsible for it. Okay, so we also try to understand the factors why industrial revolution started only from England. Iska reason kya hai? So that we try to understand through. Whenever you see for causes, you have to always break it down into these subcategories. So if we see the polity of England, many of you would have heard Glorious Revolution. Okay, Glorious Revolution had happened there in 1688. Earliest in any of the country of Europe. And Glorious Revolution means that the major power, it was transferred to the parliament rather than the king. So Britain became a constitutional monarchy with the famous Bill of Rights. What are the rights which are with the people? So that's why here polity, when we say polity, it means the king was not having arbitrary powers. The constitutional monarchy can always work better than the absolutist. That's why they took various measures okay, to boost the economy. Like all of you know the word patent. What is patent? Patent is kind like whenever you have a unique process, you have built a unique process, and now you want this innovation to stay with you. Others should not copy it. The system of patent was started by the constitutional monarchy. They also started, all of us are aware that in our rural hinterland, we have fragmented land holdings. And in these fragmented land holding, what is the biggest problem? The economy of scale is not there. So they started various movements, okay, through which they were able to do consolidation of land holding. And those people who were now free, like those people who are in very small piece of land, they could sell it and go to the urban areas, the areas where they could find employment. That was also supported by this polity, the king, the constitutional monarchy. So these political factors were very important. Plus, there was no large scale problems with respect to instability in England. All of you need to understand, England has never been invaded before the world wars. Okay, before world wars, England was never invaded. But all these countries of the continental Europe, France, Germany, etc. Germany was not united, Italy was not united, France, even though it was there, always there has been turbulence. French Revolution, the European Revolution of 1830, 48, fighting with Germany, main centerpiece of the world wars. So in these areas, political instability has not allowed economy to function very well during the 18th century. So since the polity was stable, no invasion was happening, so people can focus more on economic output. All of you need to understand why Pakistan is failing as a state. What's the reason behind it? Because the state is not stable. The major control is in the hand of army, and when army has the control, what will always army like? Army ko agar bane rehna hai, what would they want? They always want instability. Whenever there is stability, the power is going to shift from army to civilian government, because people will be under the impression, what is the requirement of an army? Like majority of us in India, we do not even know what army does. हमें पता है उनको contribution बहुत ज़्यादा है, they safeguard everything, but in general warfare level पे कुछ ऐसा चल रहा है क्या? Nothing is going on. Okay, so this is the important thing, that if your polity is stable, if your geography is where people feel safe and secure, they are bound to have more economic activities. See the states of India also. India is not homogeneous. The states where we have more better law and order, they are always going to prosper. Like we have the Naxal affected area, economic development is always going to be less, because private sector is not going to take the risk. Risk क्यों लेगा वो? If they want to invest, they'll invest in a place where they can get returns, where they can have stability. This was again the issue. That's why England was favorable in comparison to other countries. Plus, when we see economy, coal and iron, okay, they were very close by, the proximity was there. All of you understand the meaning of weight losing industries, है ना, जिसमें बहुत ज़्यादा आपका outcome जो है वो waste होता है. So that's why if the closer they are, transportation system was easily developed in the England. As all of you know, it is an island, and they were having the most powerful navy, means shipbuilding industries were already there in England. So transportation was never a problem for them. Most important thing, people were of scientific bent of mind. We see like all these important personalities like Newton, okay, later on John Kay, all of you know about Crumpton, all of them, they came up with one or the other invention. They were able to come up with different modes of production, and a steam engine bana diya. Previously you are going for manual labor for production, machine bana di tab bhi manual ho raha hai, but once the steam engine started, then later on internal combustion engine are going to start. So all these scientific things were going on in England. Religion wise also, the ethics of these people were affected by Protestant religion. And Protestant religion has only one major thing. It says that if you are lucky enough, okay, you're going to have money. But for finding that luck, you have to work hard. So in order to prove themselves, even their religion was supporting them. Okay, इंडिया में जैसे थोड़ा सा उल्टा चलता है ना, किस्मत में होगा तो आ जाएगा, ज्यादा टेंशन लेने का जरूरत नहीं। बट दे आर लाइक कि हाँ किस्मत में है, लेकिन आपको पहले प्रूव करना पड़ेगा, राइट। सो थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट चेंज। तो इवन रिलीजन वाज गोइंग टू हेल्प देम, एंड इन दिस सोसाइटी आल्सो द मेजर फोकस वाज ऑन लिटरेसी, एजुकेशन. Because of a merger of all these factors, England became the harbinger of the Industrial Revolution. One more important thing which helped them, it was the empire that was built by the British. They took resources from India, they took resources from other countries which were under their control and started boosting their economy. They had captive markets. You understand captive markets? कि बस उनके ही प्रोडक्ट यहाँ पे सेल हो रहे हैं. लाइक इफ सपोज आपकी एक इंडस्ट्री है, आपकी कोई कंपनी है, उसका प्रोडक्ट एक पूरे एरिया में सिर्फ वही है, तो यू आर गोइंग टू हैव अ मोनोपोली. सेम वाज द विद दिस कंपनी, ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी. ऑल देयर प्रोडक्ट्स वर बीइंग सोल्ड इन these areas which were not having any form of industry, no competition of any kind. So that's why all these factors merged and England became the harbinger or the beginning of the industrial revolution starts from here. Once industrial revolution starts from here, it's going to impact other countries also. Like France remained its a competitor. Okay. Similarly, later on, we see Russia, Japan, USA. They also tried to create industrial setup. But few things you have to understand. Whenever we talk about industrial revolution, it has certain characteristics. Those characteristics is, first is the economic system. Like in England, it was capitalism. But when we talk about Russia, it was not capitalism, it was communism. Or you can use the word socialism. So first is this. Second, product. Like if we see the case of England, England's initial major focus was on textile, on consumer goods. But if we talk about Russia, all of you know Russia is in defense, है ना? तो उसका major focus कहाँ रहता है? Capital goods. So the nature of product, that is always going to be important. Third, scale of industries. In England, it was relatively decentralized. The scale of the factories were smaller. But when we see Russia, Russia was having big industrial centers. तो ये बड़े industrial center का concept आया कहाँ से? It starts from Russia because they wanted to do it in a very small space of time. Fourth, the pace of industrialization. Like in case of England, the industrial revolution has been more of an evolution. धीरे धीरे करके बना है. In case of Japan, hardly 40 to 50 years. In case of Russia, hardly 3 decades. So all these parameters we are going to discuss later on to analyze various industrial revolution. Like USA is going to get heavily industrialized only after the Civil War and the last phase of the 19th century. If we see the case of France, some building blocks will start from the end of the 18th century, but later on it will in the 19th. Japan, the main movement is going to start from 1868, the restoration of their national king, that is known as Meiji restoration. उसके बाद उसका industrial revolution start होता है. Russia's major revolution industrial, it will start from 1917. Okay, यहाँ से transition start होगा और major जो उनका 5-year plan है, which has also affected India, it starts from 1920s. तो ये सारा हम अच्छे से बाद में पढ़ेंगे. We have to compare these industrial revolution. Every year UPSC is asking question from here कि किसने के industrial revolution की क्या characteristics थे and why. ये क्वेश्चन 3-4 बार आ चुका है. Why England is the harbinger or the beginner of the industrial revolution. So this is the second topic. बहुत important theme है. You can always get one question from enlightenment in the exam. Always one question will be from industrial revolution. इसको और डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे, इसकी थोड़ी हिस्टोग्राफी भी समझेंगे बाद में. ठीक है. Thereafter we see a chain of revolutions. One thing which is very clear, in world history our major focus is only on political events. इकोनॉमी के बहुत ही कम टॉपिक है, जैसे कि इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन, लार्जली विल फोकस ऑन पॉलिटी पे ही लार्जर फोकस रहेगा, पॉलिटिकल इवेंट्स. ओके, सो व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट रेवोल्यूशंस, द फर्स्ट मेजर रेवोल्यूशन इट वाज द अमेरिकन वॉर ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस. ओके, this was fought in America. In America, British was having 13 colonies, and these colonies were coming up with one various serious, you can say, kind of pressure from the Britain to accept more and more taxes, okay, which were introduced one after the other. So when we take the case of USA, United States of America, the first major settlement, it was in the area of Jamestown in 1607. By the middle of 18th century, they were able to increase the colonies to 13, and all these colonies, they were on the eastern side of USA. It was not the complete USA that we see in map today, only the eastern front. Okay, so that these were the 13 colonies. But the problem was, the people of USA were happy with the rule of Britain. Okay, we had studied the Third Carnatic War, 1756 to 63, which was a part of the 7-year war, the Third Carnatic War. This was also fought in USA. The Canada was under the control of France, but this changed after this war. France was defeated, and now Britain controlled both Canada as well as USA. And these people of USA were now free from the fear of attack from France. Both of them, they were working well because France was sitting in the Canadian region. And once they realized कि चलो ठीक है, France is gone, now we can ask for some more bargain. Similar was the case with Britain. Britain thought, we had paid a lot for the security of USA. We have fought war after war for the safety of these colonies. So these colonies should pay more. These colonies were not like India. In India, there was ruthless exploitation. This nature of colonialism was not there in USA. It was a soft kind of rule. Self-governance was already there. Only the governors were appointed by the British in these 13 colonies. So when new kind of acts were passed for collecting more taxes, okay, it eventually gave the famous slogan, no taxation without representation. These colonies said, we are not represented in the Parliament of Britain. How can you increase the taxes? You do not have any authority. And the conflicts increased with the level of time, and by 1776, they came up with the Declaration of Independence. And once the Declaration of Independence was done, the war began. This war ended in 1783. In this war, USA was naturally helped by France, because France or English, they are always like India and Pakistan of those times. Okay, fighting one or the other. So that's why by 1783, USA was now recognized by England as a separate country. So this is the first example of any colony which was able to defeat their colonial master, like Britain. First defeat for them. All of you have also read that Pitt's India Act in 1784. It came because they had already lost an empire. It was Lord Cornwallis who was defeated in 1781 in Yorktown in USA. और वहाँ पे हारने के बाद he was sent to India, that you have already lost one empire, now don't go for the second one. That's why the psychosis was there. That's why he fought with Tipu Sultan. That's why he came up with permanent settlement. All those changes were done in a quick succession by Lord Cornwallis by coming to India. And the major reason was, we should try to create a structure, okay, which can work in the long run. USA में problem यही हुआ था. They had allowed the locals to create the structure, and since these people were now empowered, they could always go for independence. तो इंडिया में आके उन्होंने बिल्कुल अपोजिट स्टार्ट कर दिया कि भाई ऐसा करने ही नहीं देना है. ओके, this is the first revolution that we have in world history. We'll read in detail all the famous leaders, okay, which participated one after the. There are various famous events also. Like the one famous event is about the tea party, है ना, Lord North's tea party, which is considered, all right. तो वो भी फेमस है यहाँ पे. 1773 का इवेंट है. तो काफी सारे इवेंट्स हैं इसके अंदर, बहुत सारे लीडर्स हैं, उनका कुछ ना कुछ कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन है. ओके, द मोस्ट फेमस इज जनरल Washington. He became the commander of the armed forces of USA in 1776 and he was the one who eventually became the first president. But जब भी हम revolution की बात करते हैं, इसको fundamental level पे समझना. Revolution is always about two things. First, it is often sudden, and second, there are large scale changes. Okay, and with suddenness it often comes with a violent acts. So revolution should have these characteristics, and this is very important. Large scale changes and this is suddenness. So whenever the word revolution is used, कम से कम ये satisfy होना चाहिए. But ऐसे बहुत सारे events हैं throughout history where the word revolution is not there. They may lack suddenness. Okay, revolutionary changes may be there, like Neolithic period we discussed. Neolithic period का time period क्या था? 7000 to 3000. So changes, no doubt, they were revolutionary. Beginning of agriculture, है ना, invention of wheel, large scale trade and commerce, pottery, etc. That is there. But do we see suddenness? No. 4000 year कहाँ है का suddenness, है ना? Similar is the case with industrial revolution. Industrial revolution starts around 1750, moved very slowly. So large scale changes were there, but suddenness was not there. Other way around is the issue in USA. Okay, they were fighting a war from 1776 to 83. We can consider हाँ ठीक है, it was a sudden decision, but large scale changes were not there. These people of USA had already created their political institution, economic institution, society was forward, enlightened people were there, leader came from the population of USA itself. Like in India, all of you understand, leaders बनने में कितना time लगता है ना? First moderates will start in 1885, 20 साल वो काम करेंगे, then comes the extremists, again for 15 years, then comes Gandhi ji, है ना, then comes the new phase of leaders, जवाहरलाल नेहरू, सुभाष चंद्र बोस, etc etc. कितना टाइम लगता है लीडर्स में? यहाँ पे पहले से ही सारे लीडर्स थे, है ना, बेंजामिन फ्रैंकलिन, famous leader, Samuel Adams, who participated in the Boston Tea Party. So leaders were already there. It means they were only fighting for their freedom. Everything else, no major change was to be brought by the people of USA. Slavery continued, है ना? When we say changes, there should be some major social changes or economic changes. No such change happened in USA. Only thing that they were able to gain was independence from Britain. That's why कभी ऐसा historical question आता है from academic point of view. So you have to understand, it's better to use the word American War of Independence rather than American Revolution. But when it comes to book में, titles में, वो हर जगह थोड़ा सा overlap होता है, तो वहाँ पे आपको परेशान होने का जरूरत नहीं कौन सा word लिखूं, कोई भी आप use कर सकते हो. But if academically correct देखोगे तो it should be American War of Independence. ठीक है? That's why when it comes to revolutions, तो इसका comparison कभी भी French Revolution से नहीं होता. French Revolution is always about the bigger aspects of life, which we'll discuss. ना, जो हमने Enlightenment में को example भी दिया. This is the first revolution. The chain of revolution will start from here. American Revolution. Then comes one of the biggest event in human history, that is French Revolution in 1789. Okay, important one. These are the revolution which you have to remember. Then comes the revolution of 1830, again inspired by France. but the revolution happened in majority of the countries of Europe in a same time. That's why it is known as European Revolution. Same thing happened in 1848. The revolution is going to start from France and then it's going to capture the rest of the countries. So once this revolution will happen in France, France will become the major intellectual leader of Europe. जो भी फ्रांस में होगा वही चीज बाकी जगह रिपीट होना शुरू कर जाएगी. But there is one famous personality, Metternich, है ना? He was from Austria. He came up with a very fine statement. He said, whenever France sneezes, whole Europe catches cold. है ना कि वहाँ पे जुकाम होगा और खत्म. So why does it happen? Because we'll see why France will become the major area of protest, and that intensity of protest वो आज भी है फ्रांस में. Even if a small decision will be taken by the government which is not considered people as deemed fit, सब लोग पेरिस में इकट्ठा होने तैयार हो जाते हैं. So France is such country even till today. Okay. Anyway, 1776 major revolution. Then we have French Revolution. Then the two famous European Revolution, 1830 as well as 1848. The spark of the event or the immediate cause will be in France in both cases. Okay. After 1848, we see a different kind of movement. From 48 till 1871, we see the unification of two famous countries, Germany and Italy. Okay. So this is the phase from 48 to 71. The next phase from 1871 to 1914, this is going to create the background for the First World War. The First World War has many causes, okay, but the larger background can be seen from 1871. ये बस आपको लिस्टिंग करा रहा हूँ, आपको समझ में आ जाए कि हाँ कौन कौन सा टाइम पीरियड किस चीज के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. In between here you can also remember there are two phases, 1789 till 1815. This is the time period where we see the rise of French Revolution, okay, and second, the rule of Napoleon. Napoleon is defeated in the famous battle of Waterloo. आपको सबको पता होगा, but 1813 is the major battle, Battle of Leipzig. Okay, in 1813 he was again defeated in the Battle of Waterloo, which led to his exile to which area? कहाँ exile किया था? First he was exiled to Elba, an island in the Mediterranean itself. Then he was exiled to Saint Helena. It's a small island you can find between South America and Africa. इतना दूर भेजा इंग्लैंड ने उनको, वो वहाँ उनका काला पानी था. Okay. Anyway, from 1815 till 1830, this is the rough time period of the rise of Metternich. Okay, Metternich was the personality from Austria. Anyway, from 1919, this World War is going to end in 1919 till 1939. These are considered as interwar years. Interwar years because this is a time period where people are going to try to rebuild their economies. All of you understand when we have a major war, what would be the impact on humans? What would be the impact on development? And as a general rule, you can always understand whenever there is even a small war, it takes a country back by 10 years. 10 years का development खत्म हो जाता है. That's why we always try to evade warfares. So this is the interwar period in which we see the rise of Hitler and Mussolini, which will be eventually responsible for the Second World War. Once the Second World War is going to finish, 1945, we see a major reversal of the powers. So far, the major area which dominated the world politics, it was Europe, and Europe is going to become a weak entity from 1945, because both world war, where were they fought? They were fought in Europe. So people who consider themselves a very big civilization, सारी civilization दिखा दी उन्होंने, ठीक है? We were able to see हाँ civilizational values क्या होता है, है ना, कि एटम बॉम्ब गिरा दो, ये कर दो, वो कर दो. These are the people who say we are a very skilled civilization. So India realized at that point of time कि यार क्या कर रहे थे हम. Anyway, we from 1945 onward we see rise of USSR versus USA. But since in 1945, all of you understand the episodes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because of the beginning of these nuclear weapons, now direct warfare between superpower was not possible. है ना, तो आप बोलते ना वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 क्यों नहीं हुआ. वन ऑफ द मेजर रीजन इज वी हैव न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स विच कैन एक्सप्लोड द होल ऑफ अर्थ मल्टीपल टाइम्स. तो अगर किसी ने एक बार स्टार्ट कर दिया तो इट विल नॉट बी थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर, इट विल बी द एंड ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी. इफ इट गोज टू द स्केल द मैनर इन विच द फर्स्ट 2 वर्ल्ड वॉर वर फॉट. राइट नाउ यू सी द केस ऑफ यूक्रेन, है ना, कि हमारा रशिया के साथ थोड़ा सा कुछ चेंज हुआ एंड वी आर नाउ मीटिंग द president or prime minister of Ukraine. So why is it happening? Because अब कोई भी बड़ी countries के लिए fight करना impossible है. USA, USSR both have nuclear arsenal. If they start fighting nuclear wars, it will be the end of everything. So that's why they went for proxy war. They started fighting in third countries. Like you see in Ukraine, what is happening? एक जगह से supply आ रहा है, एक जगह से कुछ और चल रहा है, तो चलता रह रहा है ना. When cheap oil came, India also said लाओ, है ना, अपने कुएं खाली है, we require more oil. So हर किसी को वॉर में यही चीजें चलती हैं. Everybody see their own benefit. It's not about कि क्या होना है क्या नहीं होना है. हम बाद में हम कहेंगे नहीं, there should be peace, there should be talks, conclusive talks are required. So 45 till the dissolution of USSR. This is roughly the rivalry which was described as Cold War. So we'll discuss about Cold War, and from 1991 onwards we see the rise of USA as a single superpower. So that's the last part of our syllabus. ये सारे phases हैं जो हमें cover करने हैं. Okay, so this is one theme, one big political theme जिसमें आपको एक story की तरह समझा सकता हूँ. It starts from American Revolution. American Revolution was fought for all these ideas of enlightenment. Okay, eventually in American Revolution we see participation of France. So the soldiers of France realized that what we are fighting for, these Americans, we themselves do not have that in our own country. We do not have these rights. Okay, rights were provided to the American citizens, but the French people were not having that. And this participation in this American war had a very negative impact on the economy of France. And all the reserves of this monarchy, they were gone. And add another problem, economy was the major issue which was to be solved by France. They had all the other problems of privileges, etc., etc. But the king who was in power in 1789, he was a very weak king. So that's why he was not able to handle it, and eventually we see the beginning of French Revolution. Once French Revolution start, all the monarchies of Europe, they were now afraid. Why? Because these people were coming after one after the other declaration. Declaration में क्या क्या आ रहा है? All men are equal, equality, liberty, fraternity. You try to understand. अब फ्रांस के लोग जा रहे हैं बेल्जियम जाके, तुम्हारे पास इक्वालिटी नहीं है ना, है ना? So these people are now coming in competition. So all these monarchies, they created coalitions to defeat France. यार ये सबसे पहले ये खत्म करवाओ, equality, liberty, fraternity, otherwise all this monarchy will be over. And to increase their problem, we see the rise of Napoleon. When France was under attack from these coalition, we see the rise of Napoleon. Napoleon was able to defeat these monarchies. Okay, and that's why once we see the outbreak of French Revolution 1789 till the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, these 25 years, we see lot of warfare, and it's just the fight of old ideas versus new ideas. है ना, मैंने आपको बोला था ना कि once the enlightenment will begin, those who will not accept this change will fight for it. Whenever there is a fight of idea, this eventually comes in the form of real incidents also, and this happened in Europe. Once he was defeated, starting from 1815 onwards, these monarchies somehow were able to increase their faith. यहाँ हम बच सकते हैं, we can survive. And under the leadership of Metternich, they were able to stabilize Europe on the basis of the previous old ideas. This continued for till 1848. The two revolutions started shaking the old ideas. And in 1848, we see the downfall of Metternich. And once Metternich was going to run away from Europe, from 1848 till 1871, two major states, Germany and Italy, both these states were kept divided by the policies of Austria. That's why we see German and Italian unification. Once Germany got unified, Germany became a very powerful state, and the main personality was Otto von Bismarck. Now, Bismarck was always of the opinion the biggest enemy of Germany is French, and without defeating these people, we will never have higher respect. That's why in the defining battle, the Battle of Sedan, they defeated the French, took away some of their areas like Alsace and Lorraine in 1871. A very humiliating treaty of Frankfurt was imposed on France. So France, who was dominating Europe from 1789 till 1870, there was a change of power. The balance now shifted in the favor of Germany. And once Germany came to power, Germany was not having any empire. Okay, German industrialists wanted more and more territory so that they can increase their economic production. So from 1871 onwards, we see a very intense competition in international politics for territories. And this was the phase when Africa was divided among these European powers. Within 40-45 years, the whole continent was divided by these people. Okay, and this created the rivalry between France and Germany, which will eventually lead to First World War. The First World War was created because Bismarck created certain alliances starting from 1871. Because after defeating France, he was of the opinion, अब हमें क्या करना है? अब हमें सिर्फ alliances बनानी है, and will be happy with it. In 1890 in Germany, we see the change of power. Okay, the change of power, that Bismarck left the office, and the new king, he was very, you can say, aggressive in nature. And because of his aggressiveness, the conflict in Europe increased multifold. You must have heard of these various conflicts, okay, like the Moroccan crisis, okay. You have also heard of the Agadir crisis. ना काफी सारे crises बनना शुरू हो जाते हैं इस time पे. And eventually, the most infamous event, that is the murder of French Ferdinand in 1914, which leads to the First World War. The First World War itself has some more events. Okay, that is the alternate line of history. In 1917, we see the famous Russian Revolution. Russia was one of the participants in First World War, and it was having the backing of Britain. It was helping Serbia. But a change of power in Russia, where the Lenin was able to provide leadership to the Bolsheviks, and we see Russian Revolution in 1917. Russian Revolution, it was built on the ideas of Karl Marx. Karl Marx criticized the capitalistic societies. He tried to come up with his own narrative that the society has always been divided between producing class and the working class, that is haves versus have-nots, and this became the major foundation which led to eventually Russian Revolution. On the similar lines, we see a revolution in China. So we also study Chinese Revolution. Okay, Chinese Revolution is always about the fight between the two parties of China. Okay, where we have the KMT, Kuomintang वर्सेस चाइनीज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी CCP. उनकी फाइट जो है इट एंड्स इन 1949. ऑल ऑफ यू नो अबाउट दैट वी हैव वन मेनलैंड चाइना एंड ताइवान, है ना. तो यही दो पार्टी थी. KMT वाज डिफीटेड एंड इट वेंट टू ताइवान. और जो CCP थी, द चाइनीज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी, इट वाज एबल टू विन अंडर द लीडरशिप ऑफ माओ, एंड दैट्स हाउ वी सी द राइज ऑफ China, Republic of China. So these are two alternative revolutions and which were built on the ideas of Karl Marx. तो ये भी हम पढ़ते हैं, ये भी हमें समझना होता है. Along with this, we also try to understand after First World War some of the efforts which were taken by the world leader to ensure peace, like the first international organization, that was League of Nations. Okay. So वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में आपका एक सिलेबस में ये भी अब एक पार्ट बन जाता है. व्हाट आर द वेरियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन व्हिच वर क्रिएटेड. लाइक द फर्स्ट मेजर इट वाज क्रिएटेड इन 1990, स्टार्टेड फंक्शनिंग फ्रॉम 1920. इट वाज लीग ऑफ नेशंस. दिस लीग ऑफ नेशन हैड वेरियस स्ट्रक्चरल डिफेक्ट्स. नो आर्मी वाज देयर. ओके. Its own permanent members kept on fighting with one another, and in the end USA did not join it. And that's why this League of Nations was not able to save the world from the Second World War. So after Second World War, in 1945, we see the creation of United Nations, which came with number one objective of no more world wars. Okay. But as all of you know, after the Second World War, we see the rise of Cold War. Some organization was required to create a balance. The third world, countries like India who had just barely become independent, they would ended up had becoming just a fodder for these two superpowers. है ना कि इंडिया में आगे फाइट करेंगे. So these countries wanted to develop themselves and they tried to create an organization which came to known as non-aligned movement. So we also try to understand the functioning of NAM. Okay. Similar organization is Arab League, which tried to protect the interest of the Arab countries. And then from 1945 till 1991, we see the evolution of various organizations of Europe, which in 1991 became European Union. Okay. It starts with earliest organization like Benelux. Okay. Benelux से start करता है, यूरोपियन कम्युनिटी बनती है, फिर धीरे धीरे करके क्या बनाएंगे, यूरोपियन यूनियन. एंड ऑल ऑफ यू नो, लाइक आप में से अगर कोई भी ट्रैवल करने का मन है तो देयर इज अ सेनेगन वीजा व्हिच इज प्रोवाइडेड फॉर द होल 27 कंट्रीज ऑफ यूरोपियन यूनियन. सो यूरोपियन यूनियन इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इकोनॉमिक यूनियन इवन टिल टुडे, अ वेरी बिग ट्रेडिंग ब्लॉक फॉर इंडिया. अदर देन दिस आल्सो वी हैड सर्टेन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन व्हिच वर्क फ्रॉम 1945 to 1991. Okay, and they were mostly the intergovernmental military alliances, like the creation of NATO in 1949 by the Western world, and as a counter we see the rise of Warsaw Pact by 1955. So Warsaw Pact eventually became defunct, but NATO is available even till today. So these are the intergovernmental military alliances, है ना, and they function on the objective of collective security. Means war against any of the country of this alliance will be considered as a war against all the countries. This is the principle of collective security. All right. So these are the basic things which all of you need to understand when it comes to world history. The important organizations, okay, the counter revolution. That's why they are under counter revolution. Or the other revolution were of different nature, but these revolutions were fueled by the ideas of Karl Marx. And before this, we have this specific events. In world history, we have to always try to understand the causes and the consequences. All of these are interlinked to each other. Other than this, we also have certain themes. In those themes, we try to understand imperialism. As all of you know, starting from 14th, 15th centuries, these European people, they started going to different places. That was the era of Renaissance. Like Vasco da Gama, he came to India in the 15th century. Through this, they tried to increase the power of metropolis, their mother country, by conquering one or the other territories. One of the earliest colonial power, they were Portugal and Spain. All of you know that the Latin America is mostly under the control of Spain. Brazil was under the control of Portugal. Portugal initially came to India. It also tried to control Indonesia. Indonesia was taken away by Dutch later on. So this is how we see the beginning of imperialism. That's how they try to increase the power and the prestige of their mother country, known as metropolis. So in this imperialism theme, we'll try to understand Latin America, why Latin America was annexed. Okay. Imperialism is more of a principle or the theory. The major practice is known as colonialism, the manner in which, like India was colonized by the Britain, all the resources of our country were used for the betterment of their own country. So this concept is known as colonialism. These two concepts of imperialism and colonialism were somehow redefined later on. Okay, and that also we have to understand. So this classic imperialism, it's of the 14th century all the way up to 1870. Okay, or you can say 15th century to 1870. Classic imperialism. मतलब धीरे धीरे करके कॉन्कर कर रहे हैं. पहले ट्रेडर बन के आते थे, है ना? We are going to provide you some new products. Then they used to bargain for some privileges, and with the period of time when they were able to capture the political power. So the whole process of initial imperialism, it was very slow. Like see the case of Britain and India, है ना? कितने साल लगा? They took at least 150 years to change their character from just a trader to become a political power. So this phase of imperialism was more of gradual in nature. Starting with the unification of Germany from 1871 onwards, this phase increased, and the whole continent of Africa, it was colonized within a matter of 4 decades. So this is known as new imperialism. Okay, you have to remember the word. New imperialism means the stage of imperialism which starts from 1870 with the unification of Germany and Italy, where people are considering that if they do not have any empire, then they are inferior to others. So that's why it is often said this new imperialism was guided by nationalism rather than the economic factors of the earlier era, which is not entirely true, but yes, nationalistic factors were dominant in new imperialism. Like Africa was controlled by these various European powers. Africa was a loss-making enterprise for them. वहाँ से कुछ ज़्यादा पैसा नहीं आ रहा था. They were, in fact, their cost of keeping the administration was higher, but still they were keeping these countries. Why? Ijjat. If the more territory you have under your control, it gives you more power, more say in the international affairs. So this phase is known as new imperialism. Just like colonization, okay, we also have a term which is known as decolonization. Decolonization is the reversal process where a colony is able to regain freedom. Like when we talk about American Revolution or American War of Independence, that is the first phase of decolonization. It starts from 1776 onwards and it continued all the way up to the end of 1990. Majority of the countries, they became independent after the Second World War. So this whole phase where colonies become independent is known as decolonization. All these terms you have to understand because they have a specific meaning. And when some of the countries, like you see countries like Congo, okay, they became independent from their colonial power, like Belgium. Alright, they became free from them around 1960. They became free, but still indirectly Belgium was controlling Congo. So this indirect use of control on political, economic, social institutions of a country is known as neo-colonialism. Means direct political power is not required. You can always have a puppet regime. So this concept is known as neo-colonialism, meaning a colony has become independent. On the face of it, लोग हाँ पूरा independent है, but still they are dependent upon their erstwhile colonial master. All of you know about Belgian chocolate. कहाँ से आता है Belgian chocolate? Belgium में तो नहीं है chocolate. The whole chocolate comes from Congo. So even till today, some of the companies of Belgium, they are extracting or even exploiting the areas of Congo, and this concept is known as neo-colonialism. Okay, उनको independence दे दिया, but still they are controlling their economic resources. So this concept is known as neo-colonialism. So this is also one of the theme of world history, imperialism and colonialism, and second is neo-colonialism and decolonization. और इसमें हम काफी सारे केस स्टडीज पढ़ते हैं. We take the example of like South Africa. We'll study Australia. We'll study Latin America. Okay, all these areas we're going to study. Even Indonesia. सब कुछ हमें पढ़ना है इसके अंदर कि वन आफ्टर द अदर विच कंट्रीज वर colonized and how they became independent. Okay, so if we just see your concept list. See your concept list. Like enlightenment, I hope all of you are able to understand this. What is the meaning of enlightenment? Second, capitalism. Capitalism का meaning क्या होता है? It means that the what means of production are controlled by a capitalist class, or the specific ownership is resides with one person. Okay. Socialism. So like when capitalism started, some of the thinkers, they started criticizing it. The reason was, if you see the industries, what happens in these industries? We see issues of child labor. We see issues of with respect to the working hours. You know, the people were forced to work for 15 hours, 20 hours. We see issues that these people are not getting any kind of, you can say, living facilities. You know? That's why see the creation of slums. The crime increases in these areas, like even in the industrial country like India, है ना कि इसकी कुछ अगर आप cities देखोगे like Delhi, you see Mumbai, we have large number of slums. How does it create? It gets created because of capitalism, है ना? Everybody wants cheap labor. All of you understand this. That's why majority of the companies from the West, they are shifting their headquarters to India. और India में क्या होता है? In order to get some employment opportunity, people from rural area leave their house and come to these cities. In these cities, there are not proper housing projects which can cater to them, lead to creation of slums. So all these problems which were getting created because of industrial revolution and capitalism led to rise of socialism. Means the interest of the workers should be catered to. There were so many diverse ideas under the umbrella of socialism. Some people said that it should be gradual in nature. Okay, owner themselves should take the initiative. You must have heard this principle of trusteeship. What is trusteeship? Those people who have the resources, these resources are not something which you earn. This is just the trust of the society. So it is your responsibility to use these resources in a very good manner. This is the idea of trusteeship. So some of the thinkers, they talked about this also. The socialism eventually is of various kinds. Like if you see the case of India, this is known as state socialism, where the state itself is taking the opportunity to eventually do some good benefits are created for the workers, which may include labor laws. है ना, कितने labor laws है इंडिया में? Whenever you will read economics, you will say कि भाई इंडिया में business करना बहुत मुश्किल है. Why is it difficult? क्यों मुश्किल है? Because for each and everything related to labor or worker, you have so many laws, and they were created because there was exploitation of the laborer class in the previous times. So वो एक issue था which was to be addressed by socialism. But this socialism model did not work. Whenever we talk about socialism, it has two parts. Okay, the first phase of socialism, which started emerging from 1800s till 1848, this is known as utopian socialism. All of you understand the meaning of utopia? है ना? Something which is only in the imaginary world, it cannot have any kind of practical efficacy. कुछ इसका reality से लेना देना नहीं है. So this utopian socialism means there were various ideas कि ऐसे कर लेते हैं वैसे कर लेते हैं, but definitive solution could not come. And when the definitive solution came, it came to known as scientific socialism. And this scientific socialism was given by Marx. That's why it is also known as Marxism. They came up with Communist Manifesto, which was published on 2nd of February 1848. Okay, so 1848 since we see the rise of scientific socialism. When we say scientific socialism, it has one very important principle, that is abolishment of private property. The whole issue of capitalism can only be dealt when we have zero private property. But the problem is, without private property, nobody gets any kind of initiative. Motivation ही नहीं आता किसी को. That's why this model of scientific socialism given by Marxism, even though the revolutions have happened in Russia and China, but if you see the economy of China today, do you think it is based upon these principles? No. It is even more capitalistic than India. Similar is the case with Russia. When Russia was in 1980s struggling, Russia or USSR, some reforms were done by Mikhail Gorbachev in political institution as well as economic institution. It led to the dissolution of USSR. So it means this so-called scientific socialism, even though it believes in no private property, dictatorship of the proletariat or the working class, it is not having any kind of practical efficacy. Its larger basis is that in the end we are going to create a stateless society. The same philosophy of Gandhi ji, कि we should have village republics. Village अपने हिसाब से देख लेगा. We do not require centralized form of governance. When India became independent in 1947, Gandhi used to say, once we'll become independent, Congress party should be disbanded. Why? Because the work is done. अब लोगों को अपने हिसाब से जीने दो. So this last end of Marxism and Gandhian philosophy is same, even though the methods are different, because Karl Marx believes in class struggle, the fight between the bourgeois and the proletariat, and this should happen through a violent struggle, and this happened in both Russia as well as China. So this is the difference between capitalism, socialism and Marxism. Socialism का इस तरीके से समझ सकते हो, the prominent resources or the key resources, they are under the control of the state. Like even in India, जो key industry थी, उसका concept क्या बन गया था? PSUs का. ठीक है, जैसे कोल इंडिया लिमिटेड है, coal is an important resource for the country, it is under the control of state. Railway, important resource under the control of state. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से सोशलिज्म में क्या होता है? गवर्नमेंट also take the responsibility for the betterment of the masses. Various schemes are run for the people. Tax which is collected from the rich people is used for the betterment of the lower strata people. This is nothing but socialism. But when we do not even allow private property, कोई होने ही नहीं चाहिए, that eventually becomes Marxism or scientific socialism. So broadly आप क्या समझ सकते हो? Socialism works within the framework of capitalistic society, while scientific socialism changes the basis of society, means no private property of any kind. Colonialism, imperialism we have discussed. Militarism is nothing but it's about having a complete faith in warfare, that we should have military arsenal and solutions to problems can be found in the battlefield rather than in the peace treaties. This is the attitude of militarism. ठीक है, जब फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर when it was fought in Europe, they were always thinking in terms of that we should fight a big war. Everybody was supporting First World War in Europe because they thought a big war is going to end the small wars. So this is the attitude of militarism. Okay, Nazism and fascism, this reflects the manner in which the state setup was developed by Italy and Germany under the leadership of Mussolini and Hitler, which we will discuss tomorrow in detail. आज तो मैंने आपको सिर्फ पूरा एक आउटलाइन दिया है, कल हम कुछ स्पेसिफिक इवेंट्स का बात भी करेंगे इसमें. ठीक है, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन, अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन हमने डिस्कस किया, रेस्ट वी हैव जस्ट गिवन एन आउटलाइन, उसको डिस्कस नहीं किया. इन पर्सनालिटीज वी हैव डिस्कस्ड रूसो, इमैनुअल कांत, नेपोलियन. आई हैव नॉट डिस्कस्ड टुडे. ओके, एंड इन द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑल्सो आई हैव जस्ट गिवन यू ए ब्रीफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग, कौन सा कब कब एस्टैब्लिश हुआ है. टुमारो विल जस्ट फोकस ऑन द इवेंट्स, कौन कौन से इंपॉर्टेंट एरियाज हैं पर्सनालिटीज, और पर्सनालिटीज जो है वो उसके साथ ही मर्ज हो जाएंगी विद दिस इवेंट्स. लाइक व्हेन वी स्टडी फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, नेचुरली नेपोलियन इज गोइंग टू गेट कवर्ड. When we discuss the unification of Germany and Italy, eventually we have to understand Bismarck as well as Cavour. तो हम कल उसको डिस्कस करेंगे. आज मैंने आपको एक ब्रॉड आउटलाइन दी है ऑफ द एरियाज विच आर गोइंग टू गेट कवर्ड टुमारो. ठीक है, इन सारी कंसेप्ट क्लास का देखो मेन एम ये है, आप एक बेसिक लेवल तक आ जाओ. टुमारो वी आर गोइंग टू प्रोवाइड यू द सेकंड सेल्फ असेसमेंट टेस्ट, उसको आप थोड़ा सा पढ़ के 2-3 दिन के बाद सबमिट कर लेना. ठीक है, and then एक बार prelims over हो जाता है, then we'll move with the next phase in which first we are going to start with the map of ancient India. तो आपका जो जितना भी एक 50 नंबर का क्वेश्चन होता है ना, सबसे पहले हम उसके साथ स्टार्ट करेंगे, उसको फिनिश करेंगे so that you can revise it with the period of time. Covering map is going to require some time. मैं तो आपको अच्छे से करा दूंगा in a week itself, but आपको वो खुद से रिवाइज करना है. We'll discuss more about it later on with all the basic fundamental of that question. As all of you know, वो 50 नंबर का है and it is going to play a defining role in your marks in paper 1. You can go all the way up to 160, 170 अगर उसमें अच्छे नंबर आ जाए तो. ठीक है, so that's it for today. Tomorrow we are going to have the second part of world history. Okay, online students, we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. We'll cover the rest of the syllabus from the point of view of concepts of world history. Yes.